Well, hello everybody once again from RTI and Advanced Control University. My name is Tyler Nelson, Director of Training for RTI, and I'll welcome you to Level 1 Programming Fundamentals of Integration Designer. Today's training is going to cover a number of different topics, including how to build a basic program file, including adding devices, building user interfaces, adding commands, and building a base level macro. We will continue discussion tomorrow with a Level 2 programming webinar that will cover more in-depth macro creation, as well as two-way control drivers, RTI panel. And then Thursday, we will finish up this series with a Level 3 programming webinar that will include things such as automation, how to trigger events, how to utilize flags in a number of different scenarios. And of course, as we go along with every single one of these webinars, we will be happy to answer any questions that you post in the question and answer section. But any questions that you do have after or after the webinar takes place, or even tomorrow or whatever day you think of them, please feel free to either shoot us an email via my email address at the top at tylern@rticorp.com or training@rticorp.com. But we also encourage you to become part of the RTI Integration Zone forum. You can find the link at the bottom there, forums.rticorp.com. And we are recording this for your viewing pleasure and listening pleasure, and will be posted on the training calendar, not under the pre-recorded training videos, but on the training calendar itself. We do so many webinars in a year that we don't want to confuse people by having about 300 different webinar videos of programming on the site. So we post them on via the training calendar on a link that says video of webinar. As I said, this training will cover a number of different topics. It should run about an hour and a half to 2 hours pending any questions. But I want to start off today just talking a little bit about what we're going to discuss. So first and foremost, I want to give you a brief history of where Integration Designer has been and where we're kind of going with it. We'll, of course, spend the majority of our time in the programming atmosphere today with the Integration Designer. I want to make sure you know of all the resources available to you through training opportunities, and of course, we'll summarize with the key takeaways. So let's start off with give you a brief history of Integration Designer. During the poll, I noticed that there were a vast majority of you that are brand new to RTI, and I wanted to give you an idea of who RTI is and give you an idea of where our programming software has come from. So Integration Designer and RTI were founded in 1992 here in Minneapolis, Minnesota by a couple of engineering students at the University of Minnesota. And what they found in looking through some of the higher end home theater magazines that they had laying around on their tables as they're learning how to program and build hardware, is they noticed these beautiful high-end home theaters that had a table full of remote controls. And they figured, like all good technical companies start off with, is that there's got to be a better way. And the end result was the Lexicon 500T and a programming software called LexiDraw. And it was the first easy-to-use programming touchscreen controller and software that utilized Windows as the programming base. Instead of actually having to know how to write code, they did it through a drag-and-drop environment. Well, they took that idea and ran with it, and RTI's first branded release was actually Theater Touch Designer programming software. And it was founded on the principles similar to that of LexiDraw, but expanded on a number of new features that were then available to the next generation of controllers. Ever since then, we've continued the evolution, and Integration Designer continued that evolution with a number of features year after year after year. And in fact, we were inducted in the CEDIA Product Hall of Fame. And it's something we're very, very proud of. And it has a number of different features that are built into it that give us the opportunity to continue the feature sets that are needed in the field, such as streaming devices, IP control of those devices, RS-232, feedback, being able to expand IR libraries and different devices throughout those libraries. I apologize, somebody says they don't have video. Let me just double check the settings here. One moment, please. Odd. Try this again. All right. Apparently didn't kick in. I'm just resetting it. There we go. I apologize, folks. There it is. So here, let's back up a couple real quick, and you can see those wonderful pictures. All right. So, hey, there's LexiDraw. There's Theater Touch, and there's our award for being inducted in the CD Product Hall of Fame. But like I said, it's something we're very, very proud of, and something that is a bragging piece. The unique thing about Integration Designer is that it is not just a programming software. It is pretty much the backbone, the heart and soul of what RTI is all about. Being able to have a custom integration system with a fully customizable suite of options for you to be able to make your client's interface however you and they decide is going to be working best for them. Being able to create your own IR and RS-232 databases and use those. Being able to write your own control drivers. Even be able to create your own images and be able to place those into the areas that you need, and know that it's dealer protected, which means that no end user is ever allowed to use it. All of these types of features are exclusive to RTI. We want to make sure that you benefit from all the different options that we have available for you. So we're going to continue that evolution with a number of different devices and a number of different features as we go through the process of things. And one of the things that you need to recognize within RTI is the fact that we program every single device within one programming software. This is one of the major things out in the market right now, is that what we've found is that a lot of devices, as time goes on, as the new devices come out and are released, they need to make major updates or changes to their programming software and sometimes redo the entire thing. That is not what RTI is about. In fact, we want you to be able to just continue to use the same type of programming software that you have for any new devices or features that come out. We want you to be able to benefit, and your client to be able to benefit, through what's called a continuity of user interface, which basically means that you can create a similar look and feel across the entire line of control system, whether it's an app, on an Android or an iOS device, to a handheld controller, to an in-mall controller. The consistency that you create for your clients across the board with all of their devices gives them a greater satisfaction level, because it's easier to use. And the more they use it, because they know how to use it, the more they brag about it, the more they show it off. And the more they do that, the more referral sales you get. So RTI is in the business to help you improve your business, and this is one of the best ways that we can do it. Plus, as time goes on, you're going to have new features, you're going to have new updates, you're going to have new devices that you're going to want to be able to roll into projects. We have the ability to help you duplicate and convert those devices within our programming software. In fact, you can even update the devices such as iOS and Android devices to the next generation without having to redo the entire software platform that you just worked on. So we give you opportunities to be able to help grow your business without having to spend a lot of extra money and overhead cost in terms of the programming atmosphere on it. And speaking of programming, why don't we get programming here real quick? So allow me a moment to just switch over to Integration Designer, and we'll open it up. All right. Now within Integration Designer, you'll notice, I just want to double check, make sure all the video is still pulling up here. All right, looks good here. Within Integration Designer, when you first open up the programming software, and again, this is a programming software that you must download from the RTI dealer site. And with that software, once you download it and open it up for the very first time, you'll get a look and feel like this. Now, the cool thing about Integration Designer is because it's Windows-based, I have the opportunity to maneuver windows. So this window, as an example, this toolbar up top here, is a toolbar that is most likely placed down here in your screen. Well, I've actually kept mine up here just because that's where I like to have it listed so that I can program with it up there. And same holds true for the other toolbars. We can move them in and out. We can have them stretch and shrink down. We can have them pull and all that kind of fun stuff. So you have the opportunity to maneuver these different areas to fit your programming need. One of the unique things about Integration Designer is there's a lot of different ways to be able to program. So the way I'm going to show you how to get started here today is going to be able to know where the tools are, so that as you start to program, you find your own flow and methods to the programming atmosphere. And if you have questions on it, we have quite a wide breadth of resources available for you. For example, you can go up to the Help button and select the Help Topics to be able to pull in a full-on write-up about all of the Integration Designer. and what it's all about and where you can get different things, align left, align middle, and what these types of features mean and what the button looks like. So don't be afraid to check out the help menus on here, but also don't be afraid to check out the resources we have online for you that walk you through this step by step. Now, when you first look at this Integration Designer, the three main windows that you want to pay attention to are going to be the left-hand side window called the System Workspace, this big gray window, which is technically your overall workspace, but I like to call that your canvas because that's really where you paint your picture. That's where everything is going to be done, like your creation of macros, automation sequences, building of user interfaces, even dragging a simple IR command onto a button. That's all going to be done in this general area here. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a window titled the Library Browser. At the bottom of the Library Browser are going to be 5 tabs. These 5 tabs are going to hold, for the most part, all of the different commands and feedback options and images that you're going to need to build your system. For example, the IR tab is going to be your drag and drop IR codes, for which you can also select a remote from our master list or the code set from our master list or access your own. Same thing for the RS-232 tab. The drivers tab is going to be a listing of all the different drivers that will control devices via RS-232 or IP, depending on the device, from here by issuing the specific commands and then having a variety of feedback options available for you. The objects tab are going to be all the objects available for you to be able to help program, such as IP camera streams, intercom features, one-way scrolling lists, open URL functions. They're all going to be listed in here. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, all of the images to help build your user interface are going to be under the Bitmaps tab that you see on the far right-hand side tab. These are broken up into specific categories, and we'll go into this a little bit further here in just a little bit when we start to build our UI. But let's start off our process here today, and I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. Now, as with any Windows-based program, there's going to be 3 million ways to do a single item. So you'll get to pick and choose which way you want to do it. If you like keyboard shortcuts, if you like right clicks, if you like toolbars, if you like drop-down menus, you're going to be able to have the option to choose any one of those. I'm going to go ahead and use the toolbar shortcut to create a new system titled New System. When I select this, it's going to bring up an option for me to be able to name a new system file. And in this system file, I can place that system file wherever I want. The recommended is that you go into your documents, find Integration Designer, and create your own client file folder so that you have an easy access. I'm going to go ahead and title this one Webinar AM as just an example. I hit the Save button, and before I do so, you'll notice that the save file name is going to be a .rti file, which indicates that only Integration Designer is going to be able to open this. I hit the Save button, and you see immediately 2 things have happened. The first is that the name of my file has been posted here, meaning that I've got a brand new file set up, and the Add Device window has populated. Now, this Add Device window is broken up into specific categories that allow me access to all the different devices to add them in one by one. They're broken up into categories of wireless controllers, which contain all the current model remote controls. The in-wall controllers, which should be retitled wired controllers because the CX7 is involved in that, and that is a wired-based controller. But all these devices are placed in here. The apps section, which includes the Surfer, which is an RTI panel companion remote, the T1B Plus in a companion remote mode, the virtual panel, iOS, and the Android devices, and of course our current lineup of control processors that are available to you. But one of the coolest things that I find about Integration Designer is the fact that I can actually scroll down further and be able to program any of RTI's old legacy devices in the system as well. So if I get called into a system and the client already has a T2C as an example in their project, and they just want to expand on what they already have, I could take that file that I got from the client or from the previous installer, or maybe I was the installer, and manipulate this T2C if I need to for the current devices that they may get. If they get a new Blu-ray player, a new TV, or something along those lines, I can still program those devices. So again, a way that RTI has evolved our programming software is not to eliminate our legacy devices, but to embrace the fact that people know they're reliable, sustainable, and they last and last and last. Okay, so we're going to go up and I'm going to go ahead and first select a control processor. I'm going to choose the XP6, which is a good mid-range between the XP control processors here. And when I select it, it's going to give me the option to name that device. Now, anytime you name a device, it's helpful to give it a meaningful name. It's not required, of course, but when you are building larger systems, it's helpful to know where that device actually resides. In this case, I'm just going to name this one main processor as an example. Hit the OK button or the Enter button, and then two things have happened again. The first is that the device has been placed with an icon representing it in our system workspace window on the left-hand side. And you'll notice that when I place my cursor over it, it brings up a balloon window that basically tells me the name, the type of device, when we last saved, and when it was last downloaded. You'll also notice there's a little green dot. This green dot indicates that the device has its device window open in our canvas or our workspace area here, as indicated by this window here. If I were to go ahead and close this window, you'll see that green dot then disappears, which is helpful. So again, you know which device is currently open in your window or the canvas area. Now, I've gotten into the habit that anytime I add a device in, I immediately go into the properties of that device and make any adjustments necessary for the project. Every single device is going to have its own set of properties, and those properties are determined by the features that are built into the device. So we're not just going to overload you with meaningless tabs just because. We're going to go ahead and load in the properties of the device by right-clicking, selecting Properties, and then seeing the device properties window populate for the XP6 with 9 different tabs. Now again, each one of these tabs is important, but for the sake of time today, we're not going to go through and do each individual one. If you are curious about a single one, you can just go ahead and hit this Help button, and it will go ahead and give you the option to click on a certain area to be able to populate an area to be able to select from. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Network tab as the first one to be able to point out that it is default to DHCP for the configuration of network. You do, of course, want your XP processor on the network, but if you are doing a managed and static network, you do have the option to set that up as well. We also have the Clock tab. For all of our time-based events, it's probably pretty handy to have the proper time zone set up, but you also have the option of putting in some sort of different NTP server if you want to use something different, and if you want it to automatically adjust for any daylight savings time. The Location tab is helpful with your astronomical time clock, so if you're going to do events like sunrise and sunset, it's usually helpful to know where exactly the device is and the city. If you need to choose a different country, you can go ahead and drop down the country, and if we don't have your city listed, you can go ahead and just enter in the latitude and longitude underneath any of the city choices. The final tab that I want to briefly mention is going to be the Port Names tab. And in the Port Names tab, you will see that I have the opportunity to name each one of the ports on this device. By naming the ports, it will reduce the amount of confusion I have as to which device is going to which port, or which control is going out of which port to which device. So as an example here, I could say, okay, port 1, that's my TV in my living room. Maybe an MPIO standing for multi-purpose input-output port means that all 6 of these ports available on the XP6 could act as IR output, one-way RS-232 with the CM232 adapter cable, or even voltage sensing with IR output utilizing the voltage power sense adapter known as the VPS1. I can then also change this one to say maybe this is going to be my satellite TV or my direct TV in my living room. And again, maybe my Blu-ray in my living room. Again, the nice thing about naming each one of these ports is as you continue to grow them, I can name the relays as an example. So the relay, maybe this is my sprinkler system. Maybe my trigger is going to be my garage door to be able to open and shut my garage door. Maybe my RS-232 is going to go to my receiver in my living room. Or even further, the sensing ports. Maybe I also have the power sense port, power sensing set up on my garage door so that when I know if it opens or shuts, I can be notified of that through automation. The whole point of having these names is knowing that the port's not just going to be listed as port 1. being able to, it's going to be listed as garage door, and then you can go ahead and it'll make the programming a little bit smoother for you. Again, every single one of these tabs does have importance to it, but for the sake of time, we won't go through all those. You can access the help menu to be able to pull those up. Now, you notice that I've made a couple of changes, like I named the port names. I talked about the network and the clock tab. The minute I hit OK on that device properties window, you will notice that on the device window itself, it has the name main processor with an asterisk on it. This asterisk indicates that something has changed on that device. Now, what that change can be is minimal as moving a button a millimeter to doing 15 hours worth of programming. The whole point is that it is your indicator that you've changed something and this device needs to be saved. There's not a random auto save that comes into play with Integration Designer. So I encourage you to take the programmer's creed. Save early, save often, save your sanity. By doing so, you will then be able to rest easy in the fact that knowing that the device and the changes that you've worked on so hard have been saved to the program file. There are a couple of ways to save. You can go up to the Save button here and save the one device you're currently working on. You can go to the word File, select Save All the Devices or Control-Shift-S and save all the devices you've been working on. So if you've got quite a few devices you've made changes to, you can save them all to the current system file name. Or you can change the system file name to whatever you want, maybe a different version of it. So I could select Save System As, select Webinar AM, and then maybe name this one VO2 for version 2. So now I've got two versions of this program file, one previous when I first started and now the one that I've just made adjustments to. Now, it doesn't just stop there, folks. You need to make sure of a couple things. One, make sure that you never ever keep all of your program files on one local hard drive. Please make sure to make backups of your program files somewhere else. Where that place is, it's up to you. Put them on the cloud, put them in a Dropbox, put them on box.net. You can burn them to a Blu-ray disc or throw them onto a flash drive. It doesn't really matter. The whole point is that because hard drives are hard drives and computers are computers, to save all of your program files in one singular location is essentially a death sentence because eventually that hard drive may crash. So I just want you to be protected on that. So please make sure to take your program files that you create in your client file list and store them somewhere else other than the computer you normally program on. That being said, let's continue with adding in some devices. So I'm going to go ahead and close our processor here real quick. Now, with each one of these devices, if I need to add in, say, a remote control, I want to bring up the Add Device window once again. Now, there are three real ways that we can add devices. We can use the Add Device window. We can add devices through the Expansion tab on the processor, and we can add devices through an import feature. We'll talk about the Expansion tab and the import feature in just a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and add in a device. Now, I also have the option of clicking on the toolbar called Add Device or right-clicking in the System Workspace and selecting Add New. Whichever way you do it, go ahead and select the Add New Device. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and select one of our remotes. Now, you'll notice here that when we are looking through our remotes, you'll notice that underneath the name of the remote, it will have a description of what that remote is. For example, on the T2i, it has 2.8-inch color, and then in parentheses, what the resolution of that LCD touchscreen, color touchscreen is. And it's important to note what that is, because Integration Designer and the user interface design that you need to use for it, all the images that we have available for you in the Bitmap Library or any images that you import in are going to be in a locked resolution format, which means that you can't make those images randomly larger or smaller at your leisure. Now, we will be making a major update change to Integration Designer that will incorporate that feature in the near future. But for now, it's important to note that the device itself is in a locked resolution. So when you do select them, please note what the resolution is so that if you want to find a background, you know that you need a 240 by 320 background image as an example. So when we select a device like the T2X here, I'm going to go ahead and open up this window, or excuse me, the Integration Designer goes ahead and opens up the window and says, okay, Which output option would you like me to use as a default? Now this is just setting up the communication between the processor and the remote as a default. However, we can change this on a button by button basis if we need to, and we'll do that a little bit tomorrow. So in the case here, we have three options as noted. 2.4 gigahertz, which is our two-way capable Zigbee, so I'm able to get feedback through Zigbee as well as issue the RF triggers. I have 433 megahertz one-way capabilities, which is our one-way RF triggers. And then if I want the device to work independent of a processor, I could select IR standalone, where all macros run on the remote itself and all IR codes are sent directly by the remote. We're going to go ahead and select the 2.4 gigahertz Zigbee, and then I'm going to go ahead and name this. Now I'm going to name this device Master Bedroom, and select OK. Upon doing so, three things have happened now. The first thing is that, one, we have the device that's listed in the system workspace on the left-hand side. The X represents that it's a T2X, and there's the name of the device. The other two things that have happened is that you'll see the top window, which is our page wizard window. These are pre-configured templates that are available for you from RTI for this device that we have created. Now these are, we'll come back to building the user interface in a moment, but just note that we do provide you with some good starting off templates for you. But we'll close this window for right now. The other window that's opened up here is our device window that houses three areas. We have our pages listing, our LCD screen, and then our hard button keypad. And as I mentioned before, anytime I add a device, I immediately go into the properties of the device by right-clicking on it and going to properties and making adjustments to those. And case in point as to how the properties differ based on the features that are built into it, you'll see on these tabs here that, yeah, we still have 9 tabs, but they differ strictly based on this device. So we have our ambient light sensors, we have our wake-up sources. If we want to change it to the grip sensor or just leave it at the tilt sensor, we have those options. We can put wave file sounds on there. Our network tab is there. Because the T2X does have a Wi-Fi card, we can enable the Wi-Fi adapter if needs be. Our clock. There's our output option where we have already said we want to communicate over Zigbee, and we have our two-way transport to being Zigbee. However, if I wanted to utilize Wi-Fi as a two-way transport, I can change that to Wi-Fi right there if I need to. Global keys, which are going to be the keys that will all be highlighted in green and will always have the same commands and macros or page links on them consistently throughout every page on the device. The most common used ones are going to be your mute, volume up and volume down, but you can make all those hard button keys global if you'd like. Flag names, which refers to internal logic on the device, and then our notes section for which we can make notes. Maybe what firmware is currently on the device when we load it into the client system and things of that nature, when we last downloaded, all that kind of fun stuff. So you can see how the device properties have changed from just these two devices. No less important, but they have changed. We press OK on this device. We'll see that the asterisk appears once again. I click the Save button. It goes away because now we've saved it to our version 2. So that's the first way we can add our device in. Excuse me, one way to add a device. The second way that I mentioned was through what's called the expansion device. Now the devices that will be living in our system workspace on the left-hand side window will consist of your processor, your remotes, your wired in-wall keypads and tabletop controllers, your apps for iOS and Android, and your virtual panel. However, that doesn't finish off all the different options that RTI has for you, such as distributed audio, such as expansion devices, such as our Z-Wave modules. Those will actually live on the processor. So if I open up the processor window once again, you will see that there are 4 tabs down at the bottom. System macros, which are going to be the macros that run on the processor. The events, which are the automation events that trigger those system macros to run. The expansion tab, for which we can add our expansion devices, which we will in just a moment. And then our drivers, for which we will add in the control drivers for all of our RS-232 and IP controllable devices. When we go back to our expansion tab, you'll see an option that says Add Expansion Device. And upon selection, you'll see a window open up with 9 different devices in it. Of these devices, We have the first three at the top here being our current model expansion devices, the ESC2 for our Ethernet to serial connector over IP, our port control module, which is a 4 multi-purpose port expansion module with a 12-volt trigger controlled via the main processor over IP, our 4 connection relay, normally open, normally closed relay module that is once again controlled by the main processor over IP. We can add any of the XP processors as slave processors to our system. And then of course we have our ZW9, which is our Z-Wave interface. There is one other device, which is a PCM8, which is a discontinued unit, but because it's still in the field, we still want you to be able to have access to it if necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll up and select the PCM4 as a good example. Upon selection of this PCM4, I'm going to name it. Now, once again, in the case like this, you'll want to give this a very meaningful name, such as maybe Master Bedroom PCM4, as just an example. What you name it is important because the more you may have a lot of expansion devices in there, and instead of them all having the exact same name and not knowing where they're going, it's easier to be able to recognize in this fashion. The other thing that you're going to want to do, and the most important thing, is to make sure you get the addressing scheme for this device set up correctly immediately. We highly recommend utilizing the MAC address of that expansion device simply because it will never change. However, we do recognize that people prefer to utilize the IP and the host name, so you do have that option as well. Upon utilizing or needing that information, you can hit the search network and be able to pull up if that device is already on the network and select from it. You'll see here that it's currently not, so there's no devices on that network. So in this case, I would cancel that out and just type in whatever that address might be. I press OK, and you'll see the device is loaded in. Now again, I just random arbitrary MAC address number that I threw into there as more of an example, but now you'll see that the expansion device is posted into our processor under the expansion tab, along with the name of it, the device type, and the MAC address for it. I can also then go back into the processor properties, and you'll note underneath the port names once again that underneath that edit names for, you'll now see the PCM4 is listed there for both its multi-purpose ports, for say the TV in the master bedroom, the DTV in the master bedroom, maybe the Blu-ray player in the master bedroom, and maybe the receiver in the master bedroom. We can also select the 12-volt trigger that's on there, and maybe that's going to be the TV bed lift or something along those lines. So you have the option to name those ports once again anytime you add an expansion device in. The ZW9 device is a little bit different in that fashion, and I would encourage you to check out the Z-Wave training that we have available for you on the website. So we'll go ahead and press OK here. You'll note that the device needs to be saved once again, and we are in good shape. So that's the second way we can add devices through the expansion tab. The final way utilizes an efficient programming process that integration has called import. Now what we encourage you to do is to build a headquarters file, or maybe a template file, or some sort of file that has all of your projects as you go through your systems, import it into it, so that as you go on to the next project, you have somewhere to pull that information from, so you don't have to redo your work all the time. Case in point, if I had created a KX7 in another project file that I wanted to import into this project, I simply need to just go to Device, Import, or we could right click and select Import, and then choose from the device itself. So for example, in my client files here, maybe I go to Test VO2 as an example, and you'll see all the devices in there. So there's my KX7 that maybe I want to use. I could select that KX7, and it will pull in all of the device. And when I'm referring to all of the device, I'm referring to all of the page links on it, any commands that have been placed on the device itself, any sort of feedback, if available, any sort of driver commands that have been placed on there. But if those drivers haven't been loaded, you'll notice it says driver command unknown, which means that until I load the driver in that was assigned to this page, it would not post anything in there. So it's a great way to be able to save yourself some time, especially if you create a page like a security camera page that you want to reuse over and over and over again. It's a very handy way to be able to get in and out of a job a lot faster. Again, we recommend building one main file for yourself. Maybe it's you title it whatever you want, headquarters file, template file, whatever you want to, and then you can import the jobs that you do into that file, but then also import them into new projects as you come along and as you work on those jobs to help save some time. So you can see the 3 ways that we've added device: the add device window, through the add device button, or by right-clicking and selecting add device. We use the import feature, which was, once again, we could right-click and select import, or go to device import, we added a device via the expansion device. So with these different options that we have available, we're trying to help you get in and out of jobs faster. The one last area that we need to cover before we start getting into the user interface design is that each device having its own set of properties. In fact, each button has its own set of properties as well, and each page does too. But even more so, and one of the more important ones, is that the overall system file has its own set of properties as well. And that's listed underneath the word file in the upper left-hand corner of Integration Designer. Upon selection of file, you can select system properties. And in these system properties, these 5 tabs will never change. These are always the same 5 tabs. The password tab enables you to upload a file password to this program file, meaning that if you want to try to utilize our recovery wizard, which is available on Integration Designer, that will allow for recovery of some devices, you would need to have a password in order to access that program file. If there was no password, it's pretty much open to anybody who has Integration Designer to be able to pull from on a limited device basis. But if there is a password protection on there, they would need to know that password. That is not something RTI will go around. You'll need to work with your distributors and reps on if there is an issue with that, and we will happily work with you if we can. The zone tab is referring to the RF and the Zigbee. The system zone code, you should get in the habit of changing this code to anything but 0. It can be some random number. Like if Michael Jordan's your favorite player, or I guess LeBron James too, 23 would be a good number. But don't keep that same number for every project you do, because if you're doing an apartment complex and it's all the same system zone code, you're going to run into the same problem. So just get in the habit of changing these numbers to random arbitrary numbers. The second one is the network key. This refers to the specific GUID number that is produced by Integration Designer for the Zigbee networking. If you have trouble with Zigbee, you're getting maybe some drop in communication, you'll want to check your range for one, but 2, you might need to generate a new encryption key here. By generating a new encryption key, you will have to load in the program to all the devices affected, such as the main processor and all of the remotes that utilize Zigbee. So if you're having issues with Zigbee, check the range first and make sure that is you're not out of range and don't need a repeater. And you also have your configure slave Zigbee and RS-45. We'll touch on that on Thursday for sure. The RTI panel and virtual panel tab includes how to access the remote access for those RTI panels like iOS and Android devices here. So if I wanted to get this set up so that I could use my phone from Sri Lanka, I could make sure that the IP address that I have set up, whether it's utilizing some sort of dynamic DNS or a static IP from the ISP, I have that set up in the network settings with a port routing of 4110 and do the exact same settings here, and we'll be good to go on that front. And again, we get into that a little bit more tomorrow and on Thursday. The licensing, this is where you add your licenses for those devices that you're going to be using, iOS, Android, virtual panel, you will add these licenses here. Dealer information and client information, pretty self-explanatory, but a great place for you to be able to put notes, who'd installed it, what the job number was, what the client information was. If you're working with a contractor, an interior designer, having their names. It just creates a more professional appearance when you know exactly who you're working with and maybe what some of their little quirks are. Make sure to take off shoes completely. No, maybe no shoe covers. So whatever the case may be. So it's important to go through and do these system properties as well as any of the device properties as you go through them. So far we've added in a few devices here, but let's bring up the T2X. I'm going to go ahead and left click on this, and we're going to go ahead and start creating the user interface. Now, a good general rule of thumb when you're creating a user interface is to keep it simple. The more complex it gets, the harder it is to use for most clients. A good general rule of thumb, hey, 2 button pushes is generally enough. In my house, it's 3, but it's to each their own. The beautiful thing about having a user interface such as, or having the options such as RTI gives you with a customizable user interface is the fact that you can work with your clients to figure out what is going to work best for them. And it's important to do so, to understand what have they seen, what do they like, what don't they like, what makes sense to them, what's the flow going to be. All important questions, but even more so, what are their colors? What colors do they like? Are they a sports lover? Do they prefer cats over dogs? The whole point is to create a user interface that's tailored to their lifestyle, not to the lifestyle that RTI thinks is going to be the one and only for them. We view this as, RTI is not a one-size-fits-all option. We are the option that helps any size fit anywhere that they want to go. So we can help you design these you can design these interfaces to work with any client in any situation that you want to. We can do custom backgrounds, custom buttons. It's up to you on how you want it. Sliders, toggle switches, two-way lists, all that fun stuff. Now, when building a user interface, there are, once again, 3 ways to do this. You have the page wizard, which are pre-configured templates. You also have the merge pages option, which is very similar to the import, for which then we can merge pages that we've used on prior projects or from like devices. Or we can build a page completely from scratch. Easily the most time-consuming, but also the most customizable. So let's go ahead and start off with our page wizard template. In order to access that page wizard template, just like it was brought up when we first added the device in, we're going to go ahead and select the toolbar button titled Page Wizard. It kind of looks like a smoking cigar or maybe a Harry Potter one, whatever you want to classify that image as. And upon selection of that, you will see all the available pages that RTI has created for the T2X for you. You are more than welcome to use these. In fact, you are welcome to use these and just use maybe the background or a couple of buttons or maybe a title bar. You can delete buttons from here. You can add buttons to here. You can change the images. You could use a page like this DVD Blu-ray page, and even though it says DVD, change it so it says Blu-ray. We have all those options available for you. If you are brand new to RTA, I highly, highly recommend you use the Page Wizard because the majority of the work is done for you, and then you can start to play with a few things here and there, but not have to recreate a page completely from scratch every time. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and add in a couple of pages. We're going to add in our home page and source menu. You can either highlight it and press the word Insert, or you can always double click on the selection as well. So you'll see I added in the home page. It actually came with 3 additional pages. This is a great happy hour. It's a 4-for-1 deal. So I've got my, I have my option here to be able to see those different pages: music select, video select, and video games page. And upon selection of this option, it adds all of those pages in. I'm going to add in the DVD Blu-ray page. Scan down, find a satellite cable DVR page. Find a weather page, find a please wait page, and a power off page. So I have 10 total pages. Again, I did the home page source menu, the DVD Blu-ray page, I did the satellite cable DVR page, weather, please wait, and power off. This is a good starting off point, so we're going to go ahead and close our page wizard. Now you'll see a listing of 10 pages on the left-hand side here. We have an option to be able to move these pages, rename these pages, duplicate them, delete them. It's up to you. So for example, I have 2 home pages here. I don't need 2 home pages. I just need page 2 as my home page. So I'm going to right click on the first one and just select delete page. You'll notice that when I right clicked on it, I also get the edit page title, the duplicate page, the new page, and even page properties. There are also tool button shortcuts for you to be able to do that upon selection as well. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that first page. If I want to move the satellite TV page up, I left click, hold it, and drag it to where the positioning is that I want it to go. So if I want it as page 5 as an example, I click, hold it, drag it, and there is page 5. If I want to rename the DVD page to Blu-ray, I can right click on it, edit the page title, and just title it Blu-ray. But one important note here is that when I press OK, you'll notice that the Blu-ray name changes here, but not on the actual device. Now, majority of the devices that we have run by this same rule, but there are a couple you need to be aware of. Our KX1 in-wall controller and our WK2 controllers both will display the name of the page given. So you need to be aware not to put anything too negative or not making any sense, like AAA or customer is not fun or something like that, because that will show up on those 2 devices. But on something like this, it's irrelevant. We can go ahead and name it here and make the adjustment for the name here if needs be. So I've added in a couple of pages. I'm looking pretty good here, and maybe if I want to make an adjustment here or there, I certainly can. For example, if I want to change the title of the DVD page here, all I need to do is right click on the DVD name and select Edit Text. And then I can change that to Blu-ray. I can change the font. I can change the size of the font. I can make it bold, italicized, underlined. I can change the positioning of it. I can even add a two-way feedback variable into a button text editor area if I had any drivers listed, or even some of these special characters that we have. So if you wanted to create a volume up button, you could create a text with an up arrow or something along those lines. So in here, the question that comes up quite a bit though is, can I add my own fonts? The answer is no. The fonts that are in Integration Designer are the ones that are available for you. Fonts actually take up quite a large chunk of memory. So the ones that are available for you are the ones there. However, it doesn't mean that you couldn't create your own image and be able to bring that image from your Bitmap library over onto here that has a special button that has a font on it that you want to use at a certain size. So I press OK here, you'll see that it changes and we're in good shape. So again, if you're brand new to RTI, the page wizard templates are great for you. You can make the adjustments to them. If you don't like the way they look, you want to make subtle adjustments to it, you certainly can. Now, one quick point for you, you'll notice is that at the bottom of the pages area, you'll see the word frame with a left and right arrow and a 1-1 area. Well, if I navigate up to the satellite TV page, you'll notice that it goes to 1-2. So this is frame 1 of 2. The T2i, T2X, T3X remotes all have what are called frame technology built into the remotes themselves. In fact, all of our current touchscreen in-wall controllers also have that feature as well. So it's important to note what that is. A frame is similar to a second page, except it's built into the same page number. So for example, this is page 5. Each page can have up to 10 frames per page. So as the client uses a button to go to the next frame or swipes their finger across the screen from right to left, it will go to frame 2. You've got to think of frames as more of an extension of the existing page. So if you think about a big panoramic photograph as an example, and you look at a picture from afar, you can see the entire thing, but you can't maybe see the detail involved on it. Well, when you get closer and you're looking at the detail involved on the paint strokes and all that, well, now obviously you can't see the entire painting. So as you're looking down the painting, you're essentially looking at it in frames. Same basic concept holds true here, is that we want you to be able to add additional frames in to reduce the overall programming. So what you'll notice is that when I select the right arrow again to add another frame, that I have my area that's empty here, but my page title remains, the temperature and the image remain in place, as well as the navigational toolbar at the bottom and the frame indicator. Those all remain because when somebody created this page originally and they named this, what they did with this button is they right-clicked on it and they selected the option that says Show Button on All Frames. So that button is going to show up on every single frame that we add in using that right arrow key. If I happen to take that out, if I were to uncheck that Show Button on All Frames as an example, and then go back to frame 2, you'll notice that the title is no longer there. It's there on frame 3, but not on frame 2 or frame 1. So I right-click on it once again, Show Button on All Frames, and now on frame 2 and frame 1, it is back. So again, you can have up to 10 frames per page, and all those different things will remain. So any buttons that you select that will show up on all frames, any frame for this page, if I were to put a command, a macro, a page link onto this button, those would all remain frame after frame after frame on this singular page. However, if I were to change to a page, they would not. So it's kind of like a locally global key, if you will. So the Page Wizard is a great opportunity for you, for those of you that are brand new to RTI, to get started. Now, as you start to build your program files and as you start to build your templates and create more and more new projects, you're going to want to reuse your work because building these pages is time consuming. One of the easiest things that you can do within Integration Designer to help alleviate some of this overhead programming cost is to use what's called merge pages. Merge pages is a great way for you to be able to reuse your work because it just does exactly that. It brings over the pages that you select from a like device. Now the key with merge pages, and it's actually located underneath the word file with merge pages here, is that you must merge pages with like devices. So a T2X page can only go to another T2X, a T3X to another T3X, a KX7 to another KX7. You cannot merge pages from a device like a KX2 to a T3X. It doesn't work like that. It has to be a like device. Even devices that are really close in nature, like a KX7 and a CX7, they are virtually identical except for the tabletop. However, you cannot merge pages. It has to be with a like device. It doesn't mean that you can't duplicate a device, convert it to another, and then merge it over, but we'll talk about those features in a little bit. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select merge pages, and a window is going to open up that says, where are those pages located? Are they located in another device in the current system, or are they in another system file altogether? So in another device in a current system means that you have more than one of the same device in a current system file. So if I had 2 or 3 T2Xs in this system file, I could merge pages between them instead of having to jump to another program file altogether. But if I do need to jump to another program file, I can select another system file and select OK. It will then open up and say, okay, where do you want to get that system file from? So I'll select the system file, test VO2 as an example, and you'll notice that it says there are no compatible devices found in this file. Well, that file that I just tried to open up actually doesn't have a T2X, it has a T3X in it. But case in point, it says there's no compatible devices just to reinforce that fact. So I press OK and I go, okay, well now where's another one? Well, good news for you is that there's actually a button at the toolbar at the top here that says merge pages. So I don't need to go to file, merge pages. I can just go to this toolbar as well. I select merge pages, find another system file that I can use. And maybe I don't have one here. I do have another one, however, if I just go ahead and find my system file. And maybe I have this demonstration file that I want to use. And there's my T2X. So even though it's listed as living room, I'm just going to select it and have it bring up all the pages that are available. And I can just see which pages are on there. So if I created these 2 security pages that I love and I think are awesome, I could go ahead and check mark both of those boxes. Maybe I spent a lot of time creating these. I want to reuse that work. I check mark each one of those boxes, press OK, and now everything pulls over with those. All commands, page lengths, the design, any commands any macros that I've created on those, the extra frames that I've created on those. And again, this is just a good example of how if you take the time to create something, why reinvent the wheel? reuse your work and make the subtle changes necessary for the client that you're at. Maybe all it takes is a different background image, or maybe a couple of different buttons down at the bottom to match with those that we have current, like these. So a couple of subtle changes here and there have saved you a ton of overall time by utilizing that merge page option. So in this scenario here where we use merge pages and the page wizard, we've got an 11-page file already. It's pretty robust. But I want to go ahead and create one more other page. And I'm going to do it utilizing the most customizable, friendly program software in the world, Integration Designer, and by utilizing what's called the New Page option. I can right-click in the Pages selection and select New Page, or I can go to the top toolbar and select Create New Page. Or we can go to Page, New Page, or I can press Insert. Again, Microsoft, Windows, 3 million ways to do one thing. So we go ahead and select that. I go ahead and title that page, and in this case, I'm going to create a lighting page. I hit Enter, and you'll see now I've got a blank slate to work with here. Blank canvas on my canvas, which is great. We can start having a lot of fun with this. Now keep in mind that this device is a 240 by 320 look. If you forget what that size of that LCD screen is, you can always go back into the Add Device window to pull it up and see that it says 240 by 320. Or you can take your cursor, go to the bottom right-hand corner and get a general idea. In this case, you'll see it says 239 by 317. It's pretty darn close. I can't get my cursor on the exact one, but 239 by 319, well, it's pretty close. But you can get the general idea there. So we have that image. I also have the opportunity that if I'm using a larger scale resolution image to be able to utilize the zoom button. But because this image is full screen as it is, that is not an option available on the T2X. So then I go ahead over to my library browser. I pull this window over, and there's my Bitmaps tab. Now, if you've got a smaller resolution display and you don't have a lot of room, you can keep that window short and just use the arrow keys in the bottom right-hand corner to navigate to your Bitmaps tab. And upon selecting that Bitmaps tab, you will get a listing of some 50 to 60,000 different images we have available for you, not to mention those that you will get for yourself and build yourself and use Photoshop or GIMP or, well, Paint if you're really desperate, to be able to create those, or even Copilot by GUIFX to give you opportunities to be able to create your own images. The other thing that you'll notice on your LCD screen right now is you may have some sort of grid pattern like I do here. This grid can be changed by utilizing the toolbar button at the top and the arrow key to change the grid pattern. So you can have a 10 by 10 or 20 by 20 grid pattern and have the images that you pull over and place on here snap to that certain area of the grid. However, I prefer to use the alignment tools in Integration Designer and have more of a free flow to this. So I am going to turn off the grid by just clicking on the box here on the toolbar image, on the toolbar button, excuse me. Grid goes away, and now it's free-flowing type of design. So we've got our device here. We've got our Bitmaps tab. And the Bitmaps tab, let me just pull this out a little bit so that we can get an idea of these different images. So these bitmap tabs here, pardon me, are actually broken up into specific categories. So you have a lot of different categories available for you, and you'll notice that there are some on mine that you may not have on yours. I've just built my library over the different years, and you'll notice that I even have a Tyler's Bitmaps as an example, or URL schemes, or audio icons. Those won't be listed in yours. However, you do have the ability to create your own bitmap library, and I'll give you the tools on how to do that here in just a little bit. But in our case, we can choose from the library, or in conjunction with that library search, we can also just do a character-based search. Now I say a character-based because it's literally based on the characters that you place in here as to the name of the device, or of the image, excuse me. As an example, if I were to type in ABC, you will see that it comes up with all the different images in all of my libraries, because that's I have all, well, I could just do all libraries here and really expand it out. So there's all the libraries, and you'll see all the different images in here that have the ABC listed in there. ABC family. But the minute I take out that letter C, it will greatly increase my search. You can see all of a sudden it went, the scroll button went down big time, because now I have things like this, which is my activity right dash cable, CABLE modem. So you have to be careful with this search. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that not every image in here, not every bitmap in here is going to be labeled or have a character name based on what you think it might be. Once again, if I do a search for, say, something like a grill, well, believe it or not, nothing comes up. Because when we bought this list, whomever created the list image, the images in here did not list the grill that we do have in there with a name titled grill. What they named it, funny enough, was patio. And if I select patio and type that in, there's your image of a grill. So what you need to do, folks, here is realize that not everything is named for what it actually is necessarily. It may be named based on the location for where it is. So just keep that in mind as you search. Most all of the images that you would need for a general installation will be here, no problem. But I understand if you do need to access additional ones, and there are quite a few resources available for you to do so. Now, images that we provide to you, of course, are free of charge. But if you want access and you want to be able to investigate some additional ones, what I would recommend you do, I'm just going to pull over my library here, is go on to the RTI Integration Zone forum. And on the forum, forums.rticorp.com, you can go ahead and once you've logged in into your forum by registering on forums.rticorp.com, you can scroll down and you will see a custom graphics option for you. And in these custom graphics, you will have the option to be able to add in or buy from people different graphics that they have created for the RTI universe. So as an example, here you go. There's the NHL Game Center Live. These are 3 images that are available for it. So there are people in here that all they do is create custom graphics for RTI devices. So it's a great opportunity for you to be able to access these and get new types of templates and new images that you may or may not have the time to create yourself. So again, I encourage you to become part of the Integration Zone forum. It's a great way for you to be able to access images that you may just not have the time for, be honest with you. Or if you're not Photoshop, or graphically inclined, hey, here's a resource for you. So make sure to get on the forum and do that. We also offer you the opportunity to create your own bitmap library with instructions that are listed on the RTI dealer site. So when you log into the RTI dealer site, you will be able to, after you've registered through the Register Now option and been able to download, registered and have access to it, and you log in, you will then be able to go to our resources section, and underneath the technical documents and then technical bulletins area, be able to download and read an option titled Color Graphic, Creating Your Own. And this technical bulletin will walk you through how to create your own personal Tyler's Bitmaps, or whatever you want to name it. Probably some better names out there than that. But it tells you exactly where to go. So Integration Designer, My Documents, Integration Designer, Bitmap Libraries, create a new one, and then you place your graphics in there. You can use Photoshop, you can use GIMP, you can use any of those options that you have out there. But you can see here that we also tell you how to graphically designate them based on their file names so that they show up in Integration Designer as being a specific type of image, like a background. So if you want this to be a centered background image, you need the caret hashtag BG center after the file name, whether it's a bitmap, GIF, PNG, JPEG, TIFF, whatever you want. But of course, PNG is the most preferred format because it allows for the transparencies. But you do have those options available for you. And making sure to name those as such. Now, if you are inclined to creating your own toggle switches and sliders and all that kind of fun stuff, well, then you're going to have to go onto the forum and go to this two-way graphics guide that tells you exactly how to create those graphics. But again, that's pretty intense. It includes code writing and things of that nature. But the point I'm trying to make here, folks, is that the options are available for you to really customize these to meet your client's needs. And hey, if you are really graphically inclined, what a great way to make a few extra bucks by making some buttons that nobody else has and selling them. I'm telling Ed. So now I type in something like 240 by 320 and all of the background images are posted there. So the Oasis template is the one that we're using here right now. And I can drag and drop these images over onto the option and see what's available in the Oasis tab for, say, a 240 by 320 background. And if you don't like those backgrounds, hey, you can go up and select all libraries as an example, and it's going to pull up all the different oh, it didn't do it. And there I can see all the different images that I have available for myself in a 240 type of scenario. But you got to be careful because this is a 320 by 240. So that may not work. So maybe I type in the word background as an example. And there we go. Now I've got something like this that I can pull over. Or something like this image that I can pull over. See, the point is, folks, that I'm trying to make is that the options are available for you to kind of make these into your own and however you want them to look and feel. Okay? And if you don't like what you've done, you get to use the undo button up to 30 steps to go back to where we were previous. Boom. There we go. So we've got background buttons available for you. Go ahead and choose this. Go to my Oasis tab. So we've got background buttons. If I scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that there are some additional buttons in here that have an overlapping state onto them, like these. Well, these indicate, if I were to drag and drop this on, there's a blue overlapping red, that this image itself actually has two images. It has a normal state and an active state. And if I right click on it and go into the properties of it, you will see under the image tab what those two states are. So this is how it looks normally when it's on the screen and nothing's happening with it. But if somebody were to press it, it goes to this gray state, an active state. And utilizing feedback or internal logic, we could have it remain in that active state until a condition maybe is met and it comes back to its normal state. So it's like a pushing button. You get to see the two states of it. And with those normal states, you can have it, you can add text and have that text color change in a normal, have it as a normal state and then as an active state if you want. we can scroll down a little further and you'll see that there are a bunch of buttons, but then some grouping buttons like these here. They give you the option to be able to have a group of buttons that we can place onto the screen itself, like this one, that is actually a group of 9 buttons placed together to create one image. However, if the client doesn't pay the bill, you have the option of pulling it apart until they do pay their bill. So we have a group of buttons. Each one of those buttons can be added, have its own image, its own page link, its own macros. You fully have those options. I can do a search for maybe a toggle button. If I type in the word TOG, there's a toggle button available. So if I were to grab a toggle button and place it onto the screen, there we go. Maybe if I want a slider, I could type in the word slider. And there I have a slider available for me that I can place onto the screen as well. Maybe I want something, because again, this is my lighting page. Maybe I want something to tell me what lights am I controlling with this? So maybe I want some sort of feedback box or some sort of, text area to kind of highlight that. So maybe I'll type in the word feedback and I'll scroll down and find an image like this one to be able to place right above it, like so. Now you notice that these are off center and all that kind of fun stuff. And we'll talk about aligning those up in a little bit. I know a couple people have said, well, let's put them in the center, let's move them around already, and we'll get to it, don't worry. But if I want to, I could even add text into this so I know which one it is. So I look at the normal text color, it's going to be yellow, which would be good because it stands out a little bit and easily identifiable. I right click, select the edit text, and maybe this is going to be for my ceiling lights. And I could say, okay, 10, that should be fine. I press OK. And it looks pretty good. I can read that pretty easily on the screen and identify it. Well, now I look at this and I say, you know what? I could actually move these over a little bit and have another set of lights to the right of it. So how would I get these aligned up, but also how could I copy them? Do I need to drag them over one by one again, or do I need to copy and paste each individual one? No, what you can do is if you go to your select toolbar button, this red box, which yours will be on the lower left-hand corner if you're brand new to RTI. But if you select the select button here, the red box, you can left click, hold, and drag that red dashed box across all 3 of those buttons so that they're all selected here. And then what we can do is we can either do a right-click copy, right-click paste, and have it pasted on, or if you want a quick copy-paste method with them, all 3 of them selected once again, I can hit Control and hold my Control button down, left-click on any one of those 3 buttons, and just drag it off, and now I've got another set of them. So there's 2 ways. You can do the traditional Control-C, Control-V. You can do the right-click control right-click copy, right-click paste, or you can use the option that I just presented to you, holding the Control button down after selecting all these buttons, holding the Control button down, left-clicking on one of them and dragging them off. But the beauty of doing something like that is that I can right-click on this then, go to Edit Text, and maybe this is going to be the track lighting as an example. And now we've got 2 sets. But we need to get these lined up on the page. They don't look very good as it is right now. So I'm going to go ahead and select these 2 buttons. Now I can drag that box across both of them, or I can hold my Shift key and left click on both of them. Again, using the select button tool, the red dash button. And you'll notice that one of them actually has red corners and one of them has white corners. The red corner means that this is my anchor button. This means that any alignment, sizing, or styling that I do is going to pertain to this individual button. Case in point, if I wanted to make sure that they were aligned up, I could select from the alignment tools at the top, one of which being Align Top, to make sure that the track button with the white corners is aligned to the top of the ceiling button. You notice that it moved down just a hair, but now they are lined up. But if I want to get them distributed across the page, then I could use a tool called Distribute Buttons Across. And now they are not only equidistant from each other, but also across the page itself. All right, so we've got those set up, but now we need to get these 2 set up. So I can select all 3 of these buttons by dragging that red dash box across all 3. But because I don't want everything to move in line with the toggle switch, I want it to be at the ceiling, I need to change my anchor button. And I do so by holding the shift key and then left clicking on that ceiling button. You'll notice it becomes the red the red cornered. And then once again, I can use my tools like align to the center so that everything lines up to the center of that ceiling. If I were to select align left, they would move to the left, or align right, they would move to the right. Looks like it's dancing. Dun, dun, dun. So we've got those lined up there, but then I also want them equidistant apart from each other. So I select an item titled Equalize Spacing down, so that the toggle switch then moves equidistant apart from the top and the bottom button. Now, folks, I'm well aware that I'm kind of going through these steps pretty quick. It just kind of takes practice to recognize which each one of these does. So let's do the track button once again. Let's do the track button right now. So we drag the red dash box across all three of them. We hold the shift key, left click on the track button. We want to make sure they are aligned to the center. And then that they are equidistant apart. Now that may or may not be aligned correctly. There's two things you need to keep in mind, is that I did it on this one, but it doesn't necessarily mean that these two have been lined up correctly, which they are not. So maybe I do align top, and then this one, align top. Now it looks pretty good. We've got a pretty good page here with two options available. The question that comes up quite a bit is, okay, well, if I go to frame 2, how do I recreate that wheel? Well, it's easy. If you want it exactly the same, select all 6 of those buttons. Hit Control C, go to frame 2, which is this right arrow key, and hit Control V. Because with RTI's copy and paste, we copy it and paste it in the exact original location. So now I've got 2 frames that look exactly the same, and all I would need to do would be to change the text. I can edit the text, and maybe this one is going to be the lamp. Oh, not the map, the lamp. Or maybe this one is going to be the closet. Whatever the case may be. And if I go back to frame 1, you'll notice all that's really changing here is because those buttons are in the exact same location is the text. It makes it look like a very smooth transition for the client. Now I look at this and I say, okay, well, this is good, but now I need to have I need a title bar up here, obviously. So I could look at this and say, all right, well, let's draw a button for fun. So I'm going to go ahead and select my draw button tool. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a button up here. This is the pencil. And I select that button, I right click on it, and I go edit text, and we're just going to title this one lighting. Oh. And I could look at it and say, okay, I'm going to make this 14, and let's go crazy. We're going to make it Comic Sans. There we go, because that's everybody's favorite. We'll bold it, italicize it. We're going to put it to the left, and we'll keep it like that. Now, folks, that looks terrible, right? Absolutely, it looks horrendous. So what can we do about this? Well, we could select our button here, and we could look at this and say, well, you know, let's make it transparent. Let's start with that. So I'm going to select on the normal option, the paint bucket for my fill color, and I'm going to make it transparent. Do I want to have any sort of blue border around it? Probably not. But if I wanted to change the color of it, I certainly could. I could make it yellow if I really wanted to make it stand out. Or I could just take the border and make it really thick. Or I could just do none whatsoever and make it look good. I look at this again, I say, okay, well, yeah, the yellow just doesn't work for me. So let's go ahead and put it as red. See how that looks. Ooh. All right, let's try this color. Oh, that looks terrible. How about white? Well, that looks a little better. But again, I'm just not sold on it, especially when I go to, say, the home page, and I've got that clean look. Now, this has been fun and all, but it's just not going to do it for me. So we're going to go ahead and delete that out. And I'm going to go to my home page, and I'm going to select this button, hold my shift key, select that button, and select that button. I'm going to copy them, go to my lighting page, paste them on, right click and go edit text and just rename this lighting. The key here is efficiency, folks. I don't want to have to make every page the exact, I don't want to have to make the title bar in the exact same and do the placement on every single page every single time. So just by doing that now, if I go between the weather page and the lighting page, they look professionally done. They look the same. They look like they belong together in this UI on how they look. All these pages do. So being able to have that option makes life very, very easy for you. And then you can mess around with this all you want. If you want to move them up on a pixel by pixel basis, hey, select them all, use the arrow keys, and you can move them up a bit. If you want to space, if you want to space them out a little bit, or if you want to have an option to do so, you can move them around. Keep in mind though, if you go to frame 2, those are going to be back in the original spot. So they're not going to remain on every page because we didn't want them to, because they're going to have different commands and feedback on them. So just keep that in mind as you start placing these different options on these different pages. Okay. So building a page, as you can see, we spent a good amount of time on it, and we created a fairly straightforward lighting page here that didn't have a lot of features to it, but enough for us to be able to look at it and go, okay, that looks pretty darn good here. I'm going to select these and just bring them up a little bit here. I believe it was right about there. There we go. So now I've got a page that looks pretty good, and you can see all the options that you have available for you in terms of building those pages. Now, the other key about building user interfaces is ease of navigation. And we want to be able to provide our clients with easy to use navigational tools. For example, if I go to the home button and I look at this home button, I've got a couple of buttons on the right hand side here that have the number 4 and the number 2 associated with them. What that means is that those buttons actually have page links on them, and upon the client touching them would go to, say, page 2, would be the music sources page. Or in the case of the play games, if they touch that, it goes to page 4. So when you look at something like this, being able to have those options is very, very useful, and it makes an ease of navigation even easier for you. So you have a couple of options for that. The first is you can put them on soft buttons, or you can put them on the hard buttons as well. So the soft buttons, for example, on this lights, if I wanted to put a page link onto this, I right click on it, I say assign page to button, and then I choose lighting. And there it is. Now it's number 12, and it goes right to page 12. Problem, however, is that you'll notice I don't have any buttons down below. Well, what I could actually do is, because the 22X has a 2.8-inch color touchscreen on it, although that's a decent sized screen, it's not a lot of real estate. What I could do is I actually have 4 buttons right below that screen. I could make those my navigational buttons instead of actually having them on the screen, and thus being able to open up a little bit more real estate to work with and spacing out. Again, it's all user preference, of course, and design preference. But if I wanted to do exactly what I did here, but on this button, and make it universal throughout every page on this device, I could make this key global. So if I right click on this button here, the second soft key, and select make this key global, you'll see it turns it green. And then I can right click once again and select assign page to button and choose my lighting, because this button is directly underneath this. In fact, we even provide you button keycaps for which you can swap those out with, like a home button or a lights button or a climate button. And we also offer a service called Laser Shark, where you can custom engrave these buttons for $50 per device and have full custom engraved buttons that are associated to your install. So if the buttons that we provide to you aren't sufficient to the install need, you can custom create them and have them custom engraved for your client's needs. But you'll notice now that if I do the same thing again, let's go through that process one more time. I right click on this button, I make the key global, I right click on it once again and go make assign page to button and select home. There we go. So now these 2 buttons are there, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. So for all intents and purposes, I could just select all of these and delete them. And then I get all of that real estate back, and I could space things out if I wanted to. Because if I go to my lighting page, I don't have the option to have that real estate there, which is fine, but I have the navigational buttons ready to go. So page links are a very easy way to do that. You also have a toolbar button available for you upon clicking on it, where it says assign pages, and then be able to just click on any button and it will bring up that page link option for you as well. So another way to be able to implement those types of options. So we've done a couple of things here. We've designed a page from scratch utilizing drag and drop Bitmap Library options, naming devices, copy, paste. We did merge pages, which once again was either by clicking on the toolbar button, merge pages, or going to file, merge pages. And then the first one we did was utilize the page wizard to populate the first 9 pages in our device utilizing the pre-configured templates that we already have available for you. So there's a lot of options to be able to create your UI how you and the client see it is best. And we want to make sure that you know where all those tools are. Again, creating UI from scratch, most time-consuming part of it, or of designing a system, no doubt about it. But because it's completely customizable, whether it's on a T2X, a KX7, or even an iPad and Android device, it's all customized and you can make it look and feel however you and the client decide. If you want an image of the World Cup logo as a background, hey, make the background yourself and drag it on, as simple as this. It's probably under World Cup. There it is. Oh. And place it on. It'd be as simple as that to be able to make those adjustments and changes. So the options are available for you folks. We want you to get crazy and customizable with this. There just aren't those many options out there in the field anymore, and we do work in the CI industry, the custom install industry. What better way to showcase your talents than through building a page for your client? So with all of these different pages that we've created, with all of these different options that are available for you, then we get to kind of the actual the actual programming of devices and issuance of commands. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and use the satellite TV page. Now on the satellite TV page, we have a lot of options. And of course, we're going to be able to utilize a lot of these hard button keys, but we're going to also have a few soft keys to use on the LCD screen. What I would select is the satellite TV page on the T2X, and we're going to go ahead over to our library browser and navigate to our IR library. And in this IR library, you will have access to RTI's master list. So if you click on the Select New Remote button, you will see the master list as the primary list in Integration Designer. However, we know that you want to be able to import your own lists, or maybe you've acquired a list through Remote Central, like the Megacode list, or you've utilized RTI's IR Pro to create your own custom list as well, custom IR code set library. We want you to have easy access to those. By clicking on the Open Library option, you will have access to all of those. It's just a matter of selecting it and then having it populate in, and then you're able to use those codes as drag and drop like we would with any other device, whether it's RTI's or any other master list out there. So the options are available for you. Now in this list, you can generally search by a model type. So we're going to go ahead and select the HR24. And you'll notice that it immediately slims down the list based on that model number HR24 to the DirecTV satellite HR24. Great. We'll select that one. You'll notice at the top of the library browser, it gives me the name of the device, DirecTV satellite HR24. These are all the codes involved with that device that we have loaded in to the code set. And then underneath that, it says output. This is where naming those ports comes into play. Because now I say, okay, I want to utilize a port. I want to directly port route this. So I look at this and I say, okay, which port should it be going out of? Well, in this case, I need to choose the DirecTV in the master bedroom because this remote's in the master bedroom. So there's the main processor, master bedroom, and it's for the PCM4. If I were to drag the window, let's see if I drag this window completely out, you'll be able to see it. So there we are. DirecTV, main processor, master bedroom, PCM4. Perfect, because this remote is in that room. So we can drag and drop the commands onto the individual buttons. You left click, hold that command, and drag it and drop it onto a button. Once it's placed onto the button, a letter C will appear in the upper right hand corner that is a fill color of red, indicating what it is. If you take your cursor and highlight or go near it, it will pop up a balloon that says exactly what the button is and what the command is on it. So as we place these commands on, if you have a hard button numeric keypad like this, we can use the assign numbers automatically. So I drag that, place it onto the hard button numeric keypad, and all the commands have been placed. Now that only works on hard button numeric keypads. They don't work on LCD based keypads. So please keep that in mind. The enter command goes under the enter button. It's a pretty straightforward example of exactly how these commands go on. And there's not a lot of, extra that you need to do for it. But if you're going to a soft button, for example, like this last button, we need maybe a previous. So I drag that in the same fashion as I would onto a hard button and place it on there. So there's my last button. So you have the options available and of course you can take buttons out, you can replace them, they can be whatever you want them to be. It's up to you on how you want that to look and feel as you're going through the process here. So the more commands you place on, one by one is fine. Now, the question I get quite a bit is, well, what if I accidentally put an incorrect command on? So if I took the cursor right command and placed it on the cursor left button, that's obviously not correct. So I'm going to just drag the correct command, place it on that same button, and it will override the existing command on that button. Now that's great, and it makes life pretty easy for me to be able to place all the commands in the proper locations and things of that nature. But as we go through and as we start adding in the different commands onto the individual buttons, well, it works pretty well. But what if I get to a button like ESPN2, where it's actual channel button? Could I go ahead and drag over the channel 209 enter from this one by one? No, of course not, because they're going to override each other each and every time, and the final command that I put on there, like the enter command, is going to be the final one. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help your client. It doesn't help your cause either. So we want you to be able to be as successful as possible. So in order to do something like that, we're going to go ahead and create a macro. So I right click on the button itself and select create macro, because I need a series of IR commands in this situation to occur for that channel to actually go to it. So you see, after I right clicked on the button, selected create macro, it came up with what's called the macro editor. I'm creating what's called a button press macro here, which means that the macro that I create here, even though I'm making it on the device or on that button, it is actually going to be living, as you can see here, on the main processor. And again, that's what makes RTI so great. We store everything on that processor, and all it requires is a simple trigger from that button press for the execution to happen, instead of all the commands being issued over that RF frequency. So we select the main processor here, we have our macro editor here. This is where all the macro steps will lie. So any of the commands that we choose from the drop-down list that you see here on the right-hand side, for example, this RS-232 command, I could place that in there and drag it in. In our case, we're going to just use IR codes right now. So the IR code from library, generally speaking, you'll hit select new remote, and what will happen is that the last code sets that you've used, or the code sets that you've used on the device, will populate right to the top of the list. Now, if you don't want that to happen, you just click the exclamation point and it goes back to its normal search mode. But if you do have that option on, it will populate it right to the top. So I select the HR24, make sure it's going to the proper port. In this case, the DirecTV in the master bedroom, PCM4, perfect. And then I enter in the commands. So if it's 2, I can drag and drop that 2. If it's a 0, I can double click the 0 if I want to. 0, 9, enter. But what if I did it twice? Uh-oh. Well, that's okay. We can just right click on one of these buttons and delete the step, or I can drag it to the trash can at the bottom to delete that step. I also can maneuver these. So if it was 290 for whatever reason, I could left click and hold on the 9 and drag it above the 0, and now it's 290. Another important note is that we place after each one of the IR and RS-232 code sets, there is a 0.3 second time delay that will occur after the code has been sent. And you can see that by right-clicking on the code and going to Edit Step. And there is the check mark that says delay for 0.3 seconds after this code. And the reason we put that in there is to allow the device the ability to recognize that one IR command has been sent. There's a slight delay, so it knows, okay, issue it, and then the next one's coming. If you didn't have that 0.3 second time delay built into the code set, those codes may run over each other, and then all of a sudden it's getting 290 or 29 enter instead of the 0 because the 9 and the 0 ran over each other. You can manually, individually turn the 0.3 second time delay off if needs be by uncheck marking the box, but it's defaulted all on for all IR and one-way RS-232 commands in here. So we've got 290 enter. I press OK. The letter M appears in the upper left-hand corner, meaning you just created a macro. Well, that's great. And I look at that and I say, well, it wasn't too time-consuming. But then I look at, I've got another one here. But then I go to frame 2 and I've got another 9. Well, it doesn't end there because the client says, oh, I want to have 9 channels of with my movie channels. And then I want 9 channels of sports. And then I want 9 channels. They just love these things. They're in love, which is great because, you make more money. But we need to make this process happen faster. We need the process to create these macros happen faster because they are rather time consuming going one by one by one. So what we've did within Integration Designer is we made one of those efficient programming tools that we talked about, like with the merge pages and the import. We created one for creating these channel macros, and it is titled the Channel Macro Wizard. And it's located underneath the word edit, titled Channel Macro Wizard, or if you like keyboard shortcuts, Control M. Upon selection of the Channel Macro Wizard, it will launch a wizard base that will help you create these macros in a step-by-step form, but all in one base area. So in here, we would select our remote. I already have the HR24 set up, so we're in good shape there. The IR routing we would need to do, we would need to select the PCM4 in the master bedroom. And then a little hint for you, if you hold the control button down on your keyboard and then left click on the one the port that you do want to have it go out of, you left click on that and it will deselect all of the others. So again, hold control and click on the port you do want it to go out of and it will deselect all of the others. Hit the next button. And now it's going to say, do you want me to do anything before the channel macro or any commands after the channel macro? In this case, we know we need the enter command after the channel macro for DirecTV, so we've placed it in there already for you. An example of before the macro, well, maybe if you want to have it exit out of the guide before it goes to that channel on that guide, you might put the exit command in there. Again, it's all based on devices. In this case, we'll leave it as such and hit the next button. And there you will see an image of the page we are just currently on. And if I left click on the ESPN2 button, you'll see that there is my 290 enter. Well, if I left click on the Comcast Sportsnet, then I just need to enter in the channel on the keypad here or on your keyboard keypad on your computer. So I could type in 1, 2, 3 as an example. Left click on it, it populates the entire macro. 1, 2, 3, enter. Now you can up your total number of digits that are available for your channel by going up to 9 here if you want. I usually leave it about a 5 or 6 just because, and it doesn't do any harm to it. So we've got our channel macro here. I'm then going to go to the frame, the next frame on this page. There's my discovery channel, and that's 2, 3, 4. And then encore, 3, 4, 5. Again, these are real channel numbers, as you can, I'm sure, tell. But the point I'm trying to make is that it really doesn't take a lot of extra time to be able to create these. And will actually save you a whole bunch of time down the road for creating these and thus reduce your overhead programming costs and make you more money. even if you make a mistake on one, for example, this is 789. Well, what if it's 879? Just type it in again, 879. Click it, 879. I don't need to press save or enter anything. Just go to the next button. And then when you're done, hit the close button, and all of those macros have been placed on all of those buttons for you. So we make it very easy for you to create those channel macros in one fell swoop. And again, this is IR code based channel macros, not using drivers or RS-232 or anything of that nature. It's IR, but it's an easy way to be able to do these. And again, all these macros that I just created, if you right click on them and go edit macro, can be edited if you need to put in any extra time or notes or anything like that. But you will notice that they are all living on the main processor and are triggered by just a simple button press from this button itself. So each one of these little macros that we created here is just the start. Tomorrow what we'll get into is creating a little bit more robust of a macro situation where we need to actually create like a watch TV macro or a watch a movie macro. And we'll throw a few other little wrenches into the spokes here just to kind of show you some different options and ways to get around things for creation of those advanced macros. We'll also talk about creating two-way feedback, how to utilize drivers, and introduce you to RTI panel and its configuration settings. So just to summarize kind of today, what we've done so far is we added devices in utilizing the add device. We utilized the import feature. And of course, we went to the processor and added in an expansion device into the mix as well. We created a user interface utilizing the page wizard, which are once again pre-configured templates that are completely adjustable and customizable. We utilized the merge page feature under File, Merge Pages, or using the Toolbar button. And we created a page completely from scratch, like we did with the lighting page, so that we could make it tailor-make it to our client's needs. We talked about adding frames in and what those look like. We talked about copying and pasting images on. We talked about editing text, changing colors of text and backgrounds and images. We talked about building your own backgrounds and buttons, dragging and dropping those on, where to get the information about that, through either the forum or the dealer site. We talked about creating global buttons like we did here by right-clicking on any of these buttons and selecting Make This Key Global. We talked about page links going on to those buttons as well by also right-clicking on any button and assigning to a page or selecting the Assign Pages button and clicking on any button to do so and how the number will indicate onto them. We talked about dragging and dropping individual commands onto buttons through just the drag and drop environment built within Integration Designer. And then we talked about building a level 1 macro by right-clicking on a button and selecting Create Macro and placing the commands necessary for it to work onto that button. And then finally, as we just summed up, we did the Channel Macro Wizard to create all those channel macros in one fell swoop. So it's a very easy, efficient way to be able to program these types of devices. Now, if you want to see your navigational steps as you go through and see if those page links are working the way that they are, you can always launch the preview mode as well. The preview mode is an emulator of the device itself. It won't actually trigger any macros or any testing of IR codes or anything of that nature. It is simply just press a button and here's what happens. So if we press the preview mode, you'll see it will populate with an emulation of the device. And if I were to click, say, the lighting button that we made global here, it goes to my lightings page. You'll notice that it doesn't show any toggle switches because there's no feedback to populate that. Again, this is what's happening on the remote. If I go to the home button, press games, etc. So again, the emulator is mainly used for just navigational purposes to make sure that it goes to the proper one time and time and time again. Okay. So that's a good amount of information for one sitting, I believe, and I think we'll just finish up today with just a quick summary of where to get additional information. So as we said, we are recording this training, so you will be able to view it on the training calendar, view a link that will be posted where you would register for the webinar. We always have regularly scheduled webinars monthly, so check the RTI dealer site. talk with your distributors. They should have a listing of all the different trainings that we have coming up. We will have on-site trainings coming up in New Jersey, Fort Lauderdale, Scottsdale, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas in March. And then in April, and those will be taking place at our distributor down there at those locations called Wave Electronics. And then we will also have trainings at Volutone in April at all locations starting in the second week of April. And those will cover all locations. Please contact your distributor if you're working in either of those locations. Volutone is in Southern California for those of you, and Nevada for those of you in those locations that are brand new to RTI. They are a distributor there, and we'll be hosting trainings at all of their locations the first 2 weeks, the second and third weeks in April as well. So check with the distributors or the RTI website for details on those. All trainings are free. You don't have to pay anything. You just have to register and show up. Plus lunch is provided and some good training day discounts. So, and with that, we also have videos, podcasts, websites available for you to be able to get those. So all in all, folks, I'd say the key takeaways for today, we went through them all. Key with the integration designer, in all honesty, is that it's a constant state of evolution. We're always adding new features. We're always adding new devices. We give you easy, efficient ways of programming through merging of pages, through importing of devices, through using the channel macro wizard, and being able to utilize Advanced Control University to further your education. So with that, there haven't been a lot of questions asked during the question answer during the webinar, but I want to go ahead and open it up to any of those right now. And with that, we'll go ahead and open it up. So feel free. Can any remotes or processors work off network Wi-Fi versus Zigbee? Yes, the T2X and T3X remotes both can work off Wi-Fi, and the KX3, KX7, CX7, KX10 all have Wi-Fi cards built into them that can work over Wi-Fi. They also have network connections on those devices as well, along with the KX2 also has a network connection, and the KX1 and the WK2, they all have network connections. Not all of them are necessarily PoE-based connections, but they can work off network. And of course, RTI panel does. So again, for remotes, T2X, T3X. Zigbee versus Wi-Fi? Well, what it came down to it is when we were designing Zigbee, or when we were working on the communication protocol, Wi-Fi was pretty good, but it wasn't quite there yet. And what we found is that we could design a proprietary Zigbee network for just communications with our devices, and thus eliminate any sort of interference that might happen when you're using additional Wi-Fi devices, or even at that time Z-Wave devices within an installation. Plus, Zigbee was actually a standard across the world when we were designing the two-way interface for RTI. Where every location or region throughout the world actually had to use, if they wanted to use Zigbee, had to use the same communication protocol, which eliminated the need for us to create multiple chips and multiple devices for region-based encoding. So that's not the case with Z-Wave. Z-Wave's a little bit different when it comes to that. There are regions that have their different frequencies and different communication protocols, and I would refer you to the z-wavealliance.org website to view those locations. But essentially, it came down to why Zigbee versus Wi-Fi: proprietary, less interference problems, and reliability at that point. Plus the fact that it doesn't have nearly the battery drain that Wi-Fi does. Having a Wi-Fi card maintain a consistent ping is a huge drain on your battery, and and Zigbee is not. Zigbee maintains what's called a low power ping, and it's very, I mean, it takes it no time to wake up. It doesn't even have to wake up. It's always on. Whereas if you were to maintain that with Wi-Fi, it would drain the battery really quickly. So, do you receive certificates for completion of these trainings or anything similar? Yes, those will be mailed out via email to you, probably towards the end of the week. You should look for those. They'll be to your email address. So if you put in a fake email address, you're not getting one. Is it better to stick to Zigbee versus Wi-Fi? I guess that's kind of user preference. I mean, you have the option. I guess for basic feedback and command structure, sure, why not? I mean, there's no harm in it. Plus, it doesn't, it's always on, it's always ready to go. So I think you're better off if it's basic two-way and all that. The only reason you really need Wi-Fi with these remotes, in terms of two-way feedback, in all honesty, is going to be for dynamic imagery and IP camera streams. So dynamic imagery, I'm referring to like radar images and for the weather driver and like cover art, things of that nature. If that's not what you're using it for, Zigbee is just fine. And we provide you tools on Zigbee to be able to, on the RTI dealer site, like the counter tool or the counter driver, Zigbee network test driver, to help you determine the range. Plus, you can create a Zigbee repeater network within the project to help increase that range if needs be. Are they going to be making training videos like these for the release of Apex? Yes, absolutely. In fact, on the forum, there already is a recorded webinar on there for you that you can kind of walk through. But because Apex is in its beta form, that's why it's posted there, not on the main dealer site. Once we get to the point where it's going to be closer to a full commercial release, then yes, we will of course have production quality videos that are posted onto the site that will help you navigate the new Update 2 Integration Designer. Do we receive a certificate for Apex also? No, not for that one, not yet. You will once it's a full-on certified training. Once we get that, we go through our certification. Right now, it's just beta form webinars, so there's nothing we can really certify you on because it's constantly changing. But once it does get to its commercial base release, I'm sure that'll be a little bit more strenuous of a certification process, not just watching a video, but it'll probably involve some tests, maybe an exam or two or something of that nature on it as well. But again, that's all, looking into the future and kind of what some of the plans are for it. Any other questions out there today, folks? Again, if you don't want to ask them here, please feel free to send us an email at training@rticorp.com, as is on the screen. Make sure to log into and register on the forums so that you have access to those custom graphics, as well as any other topics that you want to see and hear about, requesting drivers, feature updates, or features that you'd like to see from RTI, new devices, anything of that nature. We want to hear from you. We are an integrator-based company, folks. We want to make sure that we are providing you with not only the utmost quality of service, but the utmost quality of product. Who's holding the Scottsdale training? Wave Electronics is. They're hosting. If you want to know who the trainer will be, okay. Yes, the trainers will be Matthew Yili and Matthew Sundberg, the Mats. In fact, I think that's what they renamed their training, the Mats. Just kidding. Any other questions out there, folks? All right. Well, once again, thank you from RTI. We appreciate your time. If you do have any questions, feel free to send them to us via email. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Appreciate your time, everybody. Thank you for your business and your attention. Take care.